When a woman learns to master her emotions and reconnect with her true worth, she no longer begs for love. Should we? No, she awakens love. And the most powerful part, she doesn't have to chase it. Love returns, on its own. This isn't magic, this is psychology. Do you know that feeling, sister? That feeling of being discarded, like an old piece of furniture. No explanation, no closure, just silence. But listen closely, this isn't your ending. This is the beginning of a new you, because what you choose to do in this emptiness will define you. Will you diminish yourself or rise and be reborn? Most make the same mistake. They chase. They send messages like the phone is wired to their dignity. They plead, justify, lower themselves. And with every desperate attempt, they lose value. It's like throwing gasoline on an emotional fire, hoping to put it out. Sound familiar? You're not alone. But now it's time to rewrite the rules. Today you'll learn why silence, detachment, and rebirth aren't just advice. They are weapons. Psychological, emotional. And no, you don't need to become a spiritual guru or read 100 self-help books. You need one thing: courage. The courage to do things differently, because the woman who stops begging for love becomes the woman who creates it, without uttering a single word, just through her energy. Stay with me. This video isn't for the ones still begging. It's for the women ready to transform so fully, so authentically, that even the past turns around to take a second look. And remember this: it's not about him, it's about you. It's about your return to your center, your reconnection with your true self, because the moment you no longer need him is the moment he starts needing you. Lesson 1. The power of emotional silence. It's that silence that speaks louder than 1,000 pleas. Have you ever noticed? The more you explain yourself, the less you're understood. Here's the truth, sister. Silence isn't emptiness. Silence is strategy. When he walked away, maybe you reached out. Maybe you begged, asked for a reason, one last chance, but all that noise did was reinforce his decision. Why? Because that noise smells of desperation. And desperation, sister, is the most repelling scent a woman can wear. But silence doesn't mean you vanish, it means you leave a deeper imprint. Emotional silence isn't weakness, it's choosing not to feed a fire that burns only you. When someone is used to your constant attention, your messages, your presence, your absence becomes louder than any words. And then he wonders, why hasn't she called? Doesn't she miss me? Is there someone else? It's like walking through a crowded street every day, and suddenly, silence. What do? You stop, you notice. Something feels missing. That's how intelligent detachment works. It doesn't mean disappearing. It means creating a contrast so sharp it cannot be ignored. Epictetus said it best: first understand what you want to say, then speak. In this case, first understand what your silence communicates. Then, let him wonder. Because when you stop explaining, he starts imagining. And that, sister, is no accident. It's strategy. Women who master their emotions know this truth. What happens when the woman who always answered right away suddenly goes quiet? She leaves a void, and nature hates a void. It must be filled. The man who once ignored you without hesitation now feels something's changed. You're no longer lifting him, no longer clapping for him, no longer feeding his ego. And before he even realizes it, you become an echo in his mind, a question with no answer. Let me tell you a real story. There was a girl, blocked on every social platform, and what did she do? Nothing. She didn't beg, didn't post sad quotes, didn't send gifts, didn't reach out. She went silent. She turned all her energy back into herself, her body, her goals, her mindset. 2 months later, he returned, with a pitiful excuse. I dreamed about you. It wasn't a dream, it was the weight of her absence, the echo of her silence, because silence doesn't just communicate, it creates. While she stayed silent, she was rebuilding herself, brick by brick, rediscovering the pieces of her soul she lost by giving too much of herself to someone who didn't deserve it. And here's the truth: when you do that inner work, everything around you shifts. Your energy, your posture, your gaze. Even your silence begins to speak. And sister, he feels that shift, even from 1,000 kilometers away. Because silence is not passivity, it's power, it's a charged force, an emotional time bomb. Delete that urge to text him today. No good morning, no memes, no subtle clues, no breadcrumbs. Make yourself emotionally unavailable, and if you must, delete him. Not to erase him, but to prove to yourself that you will no longer invest sacred energy into someone who didn't value it. And while you do that, evolve. Let every moment of silence be worth 10 steps of growth. Let every breath be an act of healing. Because every time you reach out, every time you explain, justify, beg, even without words, you send a message. I need you more than I need myself. And that, my love, is the energy that repels. Because human nature is drawn not to what's easy, but to what is rare, what is earned, what is not always available. Strategic silence is like a soul detox. At first, it's uncomfortable, agonizing even. But over time, it builds strength, it sharpens focus, it transforms you, and this transformation, it's felt without a single word. It's as if you begin to broadcast on a new frequency, one that says, I am complete, I am whole. So stop trying to convince him with explanations. Let your absence do the talking. Because hear this, the one who stays silent commands. The one who chases loses, and the one who rises quietly becomes unforgettable. Stop screaming in places where no one listens. Start creating a silence so loud, so profound, that he's forced to come searching. Lesson 2. Reverse psychology without manipulation. Because when you pull away, he steps closer. Ever notice that? Just when you've let go emotionally, he returns. That's not coincidence, that's chemistry. But here's where many go wrong. They think detachment means coldness or pretending. It doesn't. Detachment is not indifference, it's influence. When you stop feeding him your attention, he begins to feel a loss. Because you're no longer predictable, you're no longer available on demand. You become a mystery, an unknown. And the human mind hates the unknown, especially the male mind. It craves resolution. Attention forms habit, and when you break that habit, it leaves a void. And that void whispers to him, something's missing. Even if he can't say it, he feels it. This isn't about games. This is about energy. You're not manipulating, you're evolving. You're showing, without words, that you're no longer the woman he once knew. You've moved. Emotionally, spiritually. And that shift is undeniable. You're not withholding out of spite. You're quiet out of wisdom. Because anyone who failed to value your presence deserves the weight of your absence. No warnings, no goodbyes. Just silence that echoes louder than sound. It's like removing sugar from a man who's only known sweet coffee. At first he can't tell what's wrong, but something's changed, and he craves that flavor again. He may not admit it, but he feels the void. And that contrast, that tension between who you were and who you are now, it activates something primal. The instinct to chase, to pursue, to conquer. Because that's what he was designed to do. And when you retreat, when you rise and become emotionally sovereign, he's drawn in, not by obligation, but by nature. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In your world, that means no begging, no drama, no war for validation, just stillness, just strength, just transformation. Let him face a version of you he never prepared for. You are no longer reactive, you are strategic. You move with grace, with clarity. And that composure, it's disarming. Because he expected chaos, but you gave him calm. He expected tears, but you gave him silence. And in that silence, the power dynamic shifts. Suddenly, he's no longer in control. He's the one wondering, asking, reaching, trying to understand what changed. Let me tell you a story. A girl once poured her heartbreak into poems and sad Instagram stories. She made herself available, even while bleeding. Until one day, she went quiet. She went to the gym, started her business, focused on her growth. And 2 weeks later, he messaged, "Are you okay?" But that question wasn't about her. It was about his unease. He could feel her energy had shifted. She was no longer waiting. She was no longer his emotional mirror. And that made her powerful. So practice real no contact, not as a tactic, but as a truth. No glances, no stalking stories, no asking mutual friends. Live your life, rebuild your rhythm. Let every hour without him become a stage of your evolution. Your distance is not coldness, it is repositioning. And that shift doesn't just move him, it moves you. You're reorganizing your thoughts, realigning your values. And finally, you are no longer waiting. You are walking. And that emotional independence, it's magnetic. Stop trying to be remembered. Become someone unforgettable. Stop trying to be remembered by the ones who only looked at you when they needed comfort. You were never born to be a fleeting thought in someone else's passing moment. You were born to be a constellation in the sky of memory, unforgettable, not because you screamed for attention, but because your silence spoke volumes. Unforgettable isn't loud, it doesn't chase, it doesn't beg. It isn't found in desperation, nor in sacrificing your dignity just to be chosen. Unforgettable is quiet power. It's the woman who walks away with grace, who doesn't flinch when doors close, because she knows she is the door. This isn't about ego, it's about energy. Because when you change your energy, you don't just change how others see you, you change the entire game. You shift timelines, you rewire destinies, you become a gravitational force. You are no longer orbiting around someone's attention. You become the center of your own universe. You are not here to be just another option on someone's list. You are here to be the woman who no longer waits to be picked, because she has already chosen herself. And when that choice is made, everything changes. She no longer reaches out in fear, she rises in love. She no longer begs, because she is being called by something greater. Her purpose, her power, her peace. The power of emotional scarcity. There is a quiet, ancient law woven into the rhythm of life. What is rare is desired. The more abundant something becomes, the more invisible it seems. Familiarity softens its brilliance, repetition dulls its light, and so it is with our emotional presence. He got used to you, not because you weren't remarkable, but because you were always there, always checking in, always answering, always giving without being asked. And in that abundance, your magic was slowly diluted, like a scent too long worn, but pull back, vanish just a little, not out of cruelty, but clarity. Suddenly you are not the background, you are the missing note in his melody. You become the unanswered question, the sudden absence of color in a painting he didn't know he cherished. Because that's what emotional scarcity does. It makes people pause. It makes them wonder. And wonder is powerful. It haunts the mind far longer than certainty ever could. Emotional scarcity is not withholding. It is rebalancing. It is recognizing that your presence is not infinite. Your energy is not free. Your love is not a public resource. It is a sacred offering. When you stop making yourself emotionally available by default, you start being valued by intention. Not for the noise you make, but for the silence you leave behind. When you're always there, you become invisible. Do you feel it? That ache inside when you've given so much of yourself, and yet somehow you've become less visible. Not more? It's one of life's cruel paradoxes. The more available you are, the less you're truly seen. You became the good morning text, the nightly check-in, the soothing voice that always asked, "How are you?" And yet, you faded into routine, not because you lacked beauty, but because you were too easily reached. You were taken for granted, like the air we breathe, vital but overlooked. Until, one day, the air is gone. Only then do we remember how essential it was, how breathtakingly needed it always was. When you're always emotionally present, always there to fix, soothe, explain, or wait, something tragic happens. You become part of the background noise, comforting but ignored, constant but no longer cherished. But when you stop, when you become less predictable, when your presence is not a given but a gift, everything shifts. You are no longer the wallpaper, you are the artwork, and his mind, which once rested comfortably in your emotional safety net, begins to unravel. Questions rise where certainty once lived. And that absence, that void you left behind, it speaks louder than 1,000 pleas. It becomes poetry. It becomes thunder. The law of scarcity, a universal truth. We live in a world governed not just by emotions, but by unseen laws, principles older than any story, wiser than any book. One of these is the law of scarcity, and it applies not only to gold or time, but to your presence. Economists understand it, psychologists confirm it. But the wisest women, they live it. What is scarce becomes sacred. Think about the bread that's always on the table. Nobody speaks of it. Nobody longs for it. Until one day, it's gone. Suddenly, its absence is louder than its presence ever was. Or the plant in the corner, always lush, always green. Until one day, it wilts, and only then do we notice it. Regretful, wondering how we didn't see its beauty before. This is not manipulation. This is not cruelty. This is reality. When your energy, love, and time were always overflowing, he forgot the cost of them. He forgot that what flows freely isn't free. But when you pull back, not to punish but to protect, you raise your value beyond measure. Now your absence echoes, not because you tried to prove anything, but because you finally stopped trying. You reclaimed yourself. Scarcity isn't about being cold, it's about being wise enough to know that what you offer is precious, and you will no longer hand it out like it costs nothing. Let your absence speak. Sometimes words are not enough. No explanation, no message, no carefully crafted sentence can carry the weight of what your silence reveals. Let your absence speak. Because when someone is used to your presence, used to your yes, your replies, your affection, your emotional labor, they stop listening. They stop seeing you as a choice and start seeing you as a constant. And nothing changes a man faster than the realization that the woman who was always there is gone. Not with anger, not with chaos, just gone. Gone from the texts he never appreciated, gone from the reassurance he never reciprocated, gone from the emotional labor he thought he was entitled to, and in that absence a mirror forms, not for you, but for him. A mirror that reflects not just what he lost, but how he lost it. The beauty of absence is that it forces reflection. It exposes. It whispers truths the presence was too loud to reveal. This isn't ghosting. This is growth. This is the quiet reclamation of your soul. You are not punishing him. You are returning to yourself. So don't send the long paragraph. Don't explain your worth. Just let your absence speak. Trust me, it will say more than you ever could. You're not hard to love. You are just giving love to the emotionally unavailable. Repeat this softly to your soul. You are not hard to love. There is nothing wrong with your tenderness, nothing flawed about the way you care deeply, feel deeply, love fully. The problem wasn't you, it was where you were placing your love. You were pouring oceans into men who could only hold a teaspoon. You gave your heart to those who were emotionally shut down, not because you were weak, but because you hoped your love could unlock them. You believed that if you loved them enough, they'd learn how to love you back. But love doesn't work like that. You cannot save a drowning man by jumping into the water if he's already decided he won't swim. You cannot open a heart that is padlocked from the inside. You weren't too much. You were just misdirected. Now it's time to redirect your love to someone who wants to feel, who is available to receive, who meets you at the depth you live in. You don't need to shrink. You don't need to harden. You just need to be wiser about who gets access to your energy. Being loved in return is not a miracle. It's your minimum. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is walk away silently. Not every goodbye needs a dramatic ending. Sometimes the most powerful departure is the quiet one, the one without fanfare, without anger, without explanation. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is pick up her soul, gather her dignity, and walk away. Silently, not because she stopped loving, but because she finally started loving herself more. This silence, it's not weakness, it's strength dressed in grace. It's a woman who has cried all the tears, written all the unsent letters, stayed up in all the midnight ache, and realized that nothing is louder than the peace that comes when she no longer begs for what was never freely given. She doesn't block him to make a point. She doesn't post for attention. She doesn't try to make him miss her. She simply leaves, and in her absence, everything he ignored suddenly becomes clear. It is often in the silence that a man truly hears, not the kind that punishes, but the kind that no longer explains. There is no victory louder than self-respect, no revenge sweeter than a healed woman walking into her new chapter, unapologetically, elegantly, and without a single word. You are not desperate. You are deep. And most people are not ready for that. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive, not too emotional, not too intense. You are deep. And that depth scares people who only know how to swim in shallow water. It's not desperation that drove you to care so deeply. It was your nature. You feel things with your whole being. When you love, it's not partial. It's not performative. It's sacred. But the world has a habit of trying to flatten women like you. They say you're clingy, needy, too much, only because your emotional intelligence shines a light on their emotional absence. Let them go. Let the shallow ones call you names while you keep diving into the truth, into the healing, into the sacred intimacy that only depth can bring. Because one day, someone will meet you there. They won't flinch at your vulnerability. They won't run from your intensity. They will hold your hand and say, finally, someone who feels like I do. Until then, never water yourself down for those who don't even know how to taste real. He didn't ghost you. He freed you. It felt like abandonment. Like a door slammed with no warning. Like the rug pulled from beneath your emotional foundation. He vanished, not with closure, not with kindness, but with a coward's silence. And yet, he didn't ghost you. He freed you. He removed himself from a life he was never ready to nourish, from a love he wasn't willing to rise into, from a woman whose depth terrified the hollow spaces inside him. You thought it was rejection, but really, it was redirection. He made the decision you were too loyal to make. He showed you who he really was, not with words, but with absence. And now the illusion is broken. The fantasy has cleared. You're left with the truth, and yes, it hurts, but it also heals. Because now you can stop wondering. Now you can close the book. Now you can stop auditioning for a role in someone else's emotional play. So don't chase him. Don't analyze the silence. Thank it. It came to clear the path for someone whose presence won't ever need to disappear to be felt. If it hurts, but you still choose yourself, that's healing. Healing isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's brutal. A battlefield of torn loyalties and aching hearts. Because to choose yourself often means to walk away from what you wanted most. It's the moment you stand in front of a closed door with your palms still warm from knocking. And finally, you stop. You let your hand fall, you turn around. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started listening. To your own soul whispering, this isn't love if it costs you yourself. Healing is that quiet, trembling breath you take right after making the hardest decision of your life. When you say no, even though your heart screams yes. When you walk away, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you refuse to keep hurting yourself. This is the kind of strength that won't win applause, but it will build your inner cathedral. Every time you choose yourself over breadcrumbs, over confusion, over emotional absence disguised as affection, you are reprogramming your nervous system to no longer see suffering as love. That is healing. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of clarity, of self-respect, of becoming your own home. So if it hurts, but you still choose yourself, keep going. You are on the path to wholeness. Faking that you're okay? You're truly okay now. You're not pretending anymore. You're not putting on a mask to make it through the day. You're not acting like you're strong, because somewhere along the way, between all the heartbreak and healing, you became strong. The kind of strength that isn't loud or defiant. It's the kind that whispers, I'm still here, after every storm. You're no longer trying to win him back. You're no longer strategizing about what to post, what to say, what silence might pull him in. Because the focus has shifted. You're not chasing him anymore. You're guarding yourself, your peace, your progress, your precious soul. And that, sister, is the quiet miracle of true rebirth. Not the kind that flaunts transformation to make him regret. Not the curated glow-up meant to provoke jealousy, but the kind that cracks open your inner world and lets the light in where it was once pitch black. He doesn't come back because you call. He comes back because one day He realizes the woman he left no longer exists. That soft, self-abandoning girl who waited on red, who shrunk herself for love, she's gone. In her place stands a woman who chooses herself every time. She no longer begs. She no longer waits. She doesn't need closure. She is the closure. And if he returns, he doesn't get to decide. You do. Because you're no longer the woman who settles. You're the woman who stands tall, not out of spite, but from sacred alignment. So the next time your chest tightens and you whisper, "I miss him," pause. Ask yourself, do I really miss him? Or do you miss the girl who once bent herself into shapes just to be loved? Do you miss the illusion? Or do you grieve the version of yourself that thought love meant sacrifice? Remember this: you're never truly alone because you have yourself. And when you finally feel safe in your own soul, when your solitude stops feeling like emptiness and starts feeling like home, you realize you already have everything you need. Don't fear the pain. Fear what happens when you refuse to grow from it. Because pain ignored turns to poison. Unprocessed wounds calcify into resentment. But pain faced, pain welcomed, pain alchemized, that becomes wisdom. That becomes the quiet fire that rebuilds your spirit, brick by brick, breath by breath. Today is not about getting him back. It's about ensuring that you never get lost again. Because your life isn't a waiting room for someone to finally see your worth. It's your masterpiece, and every choice you make from this moment forward is a brushstroke in your becoming. What you do with this pain will become the story you carry into tomorrow. Will you break? Or will you rise as a woman who can never again be replaced, not because she's perfect, but because she's whole? And if one day he does come back, he won't return to the same woman because she won't be there. The old version, the one who begged for breadcrumbs, is long gone. In her place stands someone centered, grounded, whole.